Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your attendance. Our next session will be presented by Mr. Hussam Al-Khattab, and he will present privacy implications and compliance. Mr. Hussam, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the organizers for this great event. I guess it will be a great opportunity for myself and for all attendees just to tackle the topic, some of the interesting topics nowadays, which is privacy implications and compliance. First of all, I'm Hussam Khattab, President of ISAC Amman chapter. I'm currently located in Jordan. About my professional certificates, I have the ISACA certifications in IT audit and governance and project management and COVID as well. As a start, we will talk today about the privacy in general, privacy as a concept. Then the second topic will be privacy laws and regulations, and we will tackle emerging technologies and trends and privacy governance. Last but not least, we will share some tips and takeaways that we can, all of us as individuals or corporate, can apply and follow just to make sure that our privacy is protected and well managed throughout our life stages and as well the different processes in the organization. Nowadays, we have seen many recent privacy breaches, which are just threatening the businesses around the globe, and during the past year, and in specific during 2020, we have witnessed some great or some big privacy breaches and that disclose some customer data, some personal information, and also some personal details for the members as well. For example, the first we had an incident in June 2020, which affected chartered professional accountants of Canada. Also, we have a Truecaller, the breach, which affected about 47 million Indian members. That also these members have been disclosed their details, their customer data, and this also we have seen also incidents in Indonesia, in EasyJet, and Nintendo and GoDaddy. The last incident actually is very interesting because it's affected the domains, the customers that just purchased a domain or hosted their domains via GoDaddy. So hosting your domain is not always secure. You can see that one of the recent or one of the famous hosting services also has been affected by this attack, for example, by this attack and data breach. One other interesting privacy breach that happened for Marriott hotel chain. This happened in March 2020 and has affected around 5 million hotel guests. However, hackers obtained login credentials of 2 accounts of Marriott employees who had access to customer information. The interesting part of this breach, by the way, this is different because Hotel Marriott had sad story with privacy breaches. They had a very big attack in 2018, and then this recent attack in 2020. And those 2 different attacks different customers and millions. The first attack in 2018, they were charged a penalty for not protecting the customer data by $20 million. And this attack is still, the consequences still not disclosed officially, up to my best knowledge. However, this attack just due to not managing the customer data and the customer accounts very well. So this Marriott data breach, just we can see as all of these data privacy breaches just affected different customers, different industries, and it's not just restricted for financial industry as example, because we have seen that the heat is mainly focused on financial services. However, this is not the case. We have seen privacy breaches in hotel management, in healthcare, and also in some online commerce businesses. So privacy is a hot topic nowadays across the different countries and the different environments. Also, some interesting statistics about the privacy nowadays. These interesting statistics that tell us how much is important to manage the privacy of your customer data. The first interesting statistics that we need around 280 days, just the average time to identify a breach in 2020. All of these statistics, by the way, it's very recent statistics. They occurred in they are applicable to 2020, and we have seen that these statistics, these numbers, increased significantly in 2020. The second statistics that just trying to urge the corporates worldwide to implement some controls and measures to protect the privacy of customer data, that you can save up to $1 million if you contain the breach in less than 20 days. And the last, and there's one more interesting statistics that what is the global average total cost of data breach in 2020? It's around $4 million. This is the global average total cost of data. Actually, definitely, this is not the case. This is not the case everywhere, but it's the global average total cost of data breach in 2020. So the question now that came to our mind: what's the cost of implementing measures to protect the privacy versus what's the cost of waiving all these controls and just go with the flow and accept everything as is? We can see that the cost will be very high, and this might tackle and let us question ourselves: are we ready for any data breach in the future or not? So as a start, we have to see that privacy as a concept. Privacy as a concept there is no universal definition for privacy, but because this term is subjective somehow, and we have seen many different definitions for the privacy. But from ISACA perspective and for the organization that I belong, we can talk about privacy in these terms, that it's rights of an individual to trust that others will appropriately and respectfully use, store, share, and dispose of her associated personal and sensitive information within the context and according to the purposes for which it was collected or derived. Here, after reading the definition of privacy, we can see that the main focus here in privacy is the individual right to protect his right, the individual right that to make sure that he is responsible for his data and he knows who has authority and who has access to this data and when and for what purpose. This is the main concept and the main pillars of the privacy concept. Privacy in history, decades back, we have seen that the privacy concerns was mainly about government collection and using personal information. However, with all these development in technology and all of these emerging trends, privacy concept is shifting from government side to the consumer side, because all of these online businesses are just emerging, and that's just bring more attention to the customer data and how organizations are using these customer data for their businesses and in which purpose and which context. So the privacy is no longer about the government collection about its citizens. Now we are talking about customer data and how they are protected across the different environments and the different processes within the corporate itself. The privacy, many has some confusion about the term privacy and confidentiality. What's the difference between privacy and confidentiality? How such terms are not similar to each other? Actually, there is some intersection between the privacy and confidentiality, but the main difference here that can guide us through differentiating between privacy and confidentiality is the perspective. We are looking at the concept itself. Privacy applies to individual, while confidentiality applies to data. So in privacy, the main concept is the person, is the individual. However, in the confidentiality, the main purpose here is the data itself. But privacy is about limiting the access of the public. Confidentiality, preventing information and documents from unauthorized access. So confidentiality is much wider term. However, the privacy itself is just limiting the access of the public for the individual, for the same individual. So here the main hero or in the privacy is the data owner, while the main hero in the confidentiality is the data itself. In privacy, everyone is disallowed. In confidentiality, there are some people are allowed according to the business needs and justified justifications and so on. However, privacy also the main difference here. Privacy is a right. Confidentiality is an agreement. Privacy is a right. Every one of us has the right to protect his data, has the right to control who can view this data, who can access this data, and who can use this data. However, confidentiality is about agreement between two interested parties. For example, confidentiality between the customer and the organization. Maybe the customer and the vendor. Some vendor and another vendor. Both of us, they have some mutual the treatment and some mutual agreement. Just I agree and attest that I will keep the confidentiality throughout the process. That's it. So confidentiality mainly sometimes we can see it as a contractual term. However, privacy we are now talking about fundamental human right for each one of us. Terms of movies. Sometimes I like just to bring some movies to our attention, just to make the idea more closer. Confidentiality is very applicable to the movie Imitation Game. I'm not sure if you have seen it or not, but however, confidentiality in Imitation Game is talking about Alan Turing, who just came with a confidentiality concept at World War, and how he just benefited the European and the Germans to encrypt their communication during the military journey. However, in privacy, the Truman Show. The Truman Show is just talking about how an individual, his acts, his sayings, his words, his actions are subject to monitoring by the government. So the privacy here, we can see the Truman Show is very individual basis, because it's talking about one person who discovered at the end that his life details are recorded and monitored and watched. However, in confidentiality, in Imitation Game, we have seen that this how to encrypt and to secure the communication for military purposes between the different parties. Privacy categories. Now we have different categories of privacy. First category is privacy of the person, such as your genetic testing or passenger scanning devices at airports. The second category, privacy of behaviors and actions, such as your personal activities, orientations, and preferences. The third category, privacy of thoughts and feelings, such as social media. And let me get back to the movies again. I'm not sure about maybe some of you have watched the Social Dilemma. Social Dilemma, this new documentary issued like 2 months ago, and it discussed how social media is using our data to make more profits, is using our data to track our actions through the social media, and just this make us cautious about our thoughts and feelings, and make us more concerned about who has access to our thoughts and feelings and who know them. The last category, communication privacy, such as emails and calls. And you can see now that once we say privacy here, it's not the same of confidentiality, because privacy here, because maybe I need some private communication, one-to-one conversation between me and any other interested party. So this communication now is private because it's from individual perspective, not from the data perspective. The second topic now for today is privacy laws and regulations. Throughout the years, especially during the past decade, we are seeing more laws and regulations are issued related to the privacy, and all of this privacy can be divided into four categories. The first category is comprehensive model. It's just general model. It applies to all industry, to different people. As this is just such as GDPR, General Data Protection Law in the European Union. Sectoral model. These laws and regulations applies to specific sector. For example, healthcare or financial services. How it's not applicable to other services because the regulatory body who issued this regulation is monitoring this specific sector. The third category, co-regulatory model, we have seen this in Australia because it's seen some cooperation between different sectors and some cooperation between different parties. Self-regulatory model, there is no privacy or data protection law. It's just left to the enterprises to manage and to create their own rules. And this is very clear in China and related to this topic. Comprehensive model for GDPR. This is one of the most familiar privacy laws nowadays. It came into effect in May 2018. It considered privacy as a fundamental human right. Just like having some access to data, as just having your water and your freedom of speech. Privacy nowadays in European Union is considered as a fundamental human right. 28 member states with a total estimated population of 500 million people is affected by this law. And just to manage the scope of implementation of this great privacy law, we can imagine how many number of corporates, how many number of individuals are affected, because we are not talking about one country. It's almost 28 member states that are sharing this applicability of law in their industries and their processes. However, some interesting fact about GDPR is consequences of incompliance calculates to be greater than the sum of 20 million euro or 4% of your annual worldwide turnover. By the way, maybe the Marriott hotel chain was one of the first parties to be affected by this regulation, because they have to pay around, as I mentioned before, 20 million euro as a penalty for not complying with GDPR and for not protecting the customer data. In the United States, we are seeing more regulation related specifically in healthcare and also the financial sectors and many different sectors. However, every sector has its laws, every sector has its regulatory body. So if you are a corporate or a startup in any of these sectors, you have to make sure that you are complying with the regulations that were issued by the specific or by the concerned regulatory body. In Australia, the co-regulatory model, we have the co-regulatory model is more of cooperation between the different parties and between the different regulatory body to issue some general laws that are applicable to all of this, to all of these applicable scope. And now the interesting part is the privacy laws and regulations in Arabic region. I have to mention that during the past 3 to 4 years, we have seen that the privacy regulations in Arabic region is emerging as increasing as well. This started. I will talk about some interesting countries. United Arab Emirates. Well, there is no universal data protection law in United Arab Emirates, but we have 2 laws that are applicable to different financial sectors. First one, Dubai International Financial Center, Data Protection Law of 2007, and the second, Abu Dhabi Global Market. They also have issued a regulation in 2018 and 2020 as well. Qatar, they have some personal data protection law of 2016. Turkey maybe it's not an Arabic country, however, it's in the Middle East region. So I prefer just to highlight it, just to make sure that we are familiar with the surrounding environment around us. Turkey has personal data protection law that issues in 2016. Bahrain has also a personal data protection law of 2018. Lebanon has a data protection law, but it's not general. It's very specific and very particular to electronic transactions and personal data of 2018. So we can't say that this Lebanese law is applicable to every process. However, it tackles the laws in some angles. Egypt has some data protection law has been approved by the parliament. It's still not official yet. We are expecting it in the coming months. Jordan as well has personal protection law, but it is draft and it's under approval process. And there's some more example that is not written here for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the privacy regulations are disreputed over the industries. For example, and sometimes they are embedding the privacy terms within the regulation itself. For example, the cloud computing regulation, the KSA issued the cloud computing regulation, and within its terms, they mandate that the organizations have to secure the privacy throughout its processes. So the privacy laws and regulations can take many forms. Some countries prefer to issue a general law for all of its industries and privacy and organizations, and other countries may just choose to embed privacy terms within the different regulations. And one interesting term that has been introduced by GDPR regulation is right to be forgotten. It's right of an individual to have their internet actions or the things that are posted about them on the internet removed at their request to prevent embarrassment or other negative life impacts and harms. So any one of us can choose and can approach any company and requesting to delete his data, to delete his actions upon his requests. And this is the one of the GDPR main pillars, right to be forgotten. It's your right to choose when to delete your data. It's your right to choose how that your internet actions are reported and how your internet actions are stored as well. The third topic nowadays, for this presentation, emerging technologies and trends. And all of these emerging technologies and trends are affecting our privacy. First one, definitely social media. The social media platform, either it's Facebook, Instagram, and maybe Snapchat, TikTok, and so on. Cloud computing with the different technologies, mobile applications. This interesting topic about emerging technology, we have seen through COVID-19 mobile apps, big data analytics, Internet of Things, bring your own device, and surveillance technologies. And maybe the last topic is tackled in China in specific, and we have read many news about how China is using this technology and the privacy concerns in this regard. Mobile apps usage during the Statista, according to Statista website, throughout the years from 2019 till 2023, mobile apps will be increased, and the number of consumers will be increasing throughout the years. And it's projected that in 2023, the number of mobile apps users will be more than 7 billion users. Now we can imagine how privacy will be important for all of these users. Mobile apps in COVID-19 have different methodologies. Some countries choose to implement COVID-19 mobile apps as centralized apps, so all of your data is stored in central location, and typically it's sometimes with the government. Decentralized apps, information is stored on individual phones, and no central database is in place. And these categories of mobile apps, all of these have emerged starting from January 2020. Some of these apps are informational apps, other are self-assessment, contact tracing apps, and multi-purpose apps and other apps. And contact tracing apps just to trace the symptoms and who has the COVID-19 virus. And these applications has emerged in China and Singapore. By the way, China is centralized and Singapore is decentralized. Contact tracing apps. Also, we have read some news that are saying that companies will implement tracing apps for their employees. So we are not talking about citizens now. We are talking about smaller perspective that contact tracing apps will be focused on the employees themselves. And all of these news have been emerged that maybe one of the consulting companies, PwC, have been involved in this. This news have came up in May in 2020, and other companies were also noted in US. Now, issues to consider in all of these COVID-19 mobile apps. Where does our privacy as individual lie, and the terms of conditions and laws of regulations? So once you have any mobile app, a new mobile app, we also have to keep an eye on the regulation in the country itself. And the last topic for today, privacy governance framework. Privacy governance framework is more of a life cycle. We started with developing privacy policies and procedures, and the second will privacy program controls, then ongoing assessment, and all of these are supported by the organizational commitment. If we have no leadership commitment and no universal culture, we will face issues in privacy. The privacy governance will start with defining and managing privacy policies, then identify and classify your data and map identities to data. The fourth stage will be risk assessment and treatment plan, or protect your data and manage life. And the last thing is about ongoing assessment, having a privacy audit throughout just the year and regularly to make sure that you are protecting the customer data and you are complying very well to the applicable laws and regulations. Now, if we want to develop an enterprise privacy policy, factors to consider, we have applicable legal requirements, business operational and functional requirements, intellectual property and data protection need, and existing policy within the other parts of the enterprise, unique IT enterprise architecture and designs. Privacy technologies applicability throughout the enterprise. So we don't want just to develop a privacy policy without considering the specialty and of the organization itself. Privacy lifecycle, budget and cost management, privacy vision, goals and metrics, and maybe that the last two items are very important. Having the culture. So we don't expect just to move from one stage to another without having some sort of proper change management in the culture. Universal culture will help us a lot in protecting the privacy and in protecting the customer's needs and in improving our situation in this regard. And the last topic, third-party privacy. Also, we have seen many vendors are approaching companies just for some sort of businesses or projects. So make sure that once third party are doing business with your corporate, that they are not breaching your privacy policy and your controls as well. And the last topic, just I need 2 minutes, Linda. I'm sorry if I'm late.
Okay.
Okay.
Some questions also.
Yeah, okay. How can organization protect customer data? Just enterprise the business need, develop a privacy policy, communicate with customers, secure the data, minimize the data collection, and perform a regular privacy audit. And the last topic is implement measures to detect and respond to a data breach. Now, the topic that all of us maybe might be interested to know, how can an individual protect his or her privacy? We are not talking from corporate perspective now. We are talking about from personal perspective. First of all, don't fill out the social media profile. Make sure just to share as minimum data as much, because this is not recommended. Use strong and complex authentication techniques, and all of websites now are introducing two-factor authentication. And maybe because in social media platform as well, in specific, all of these social media platforms have implemented two-factor authentications. Set a Google alert for your name. Disable GPS on your phone when not needed. It's worth mentioning that some COVID-19 mobile apps are requiring GPS. So if you are not using these tracing apps and if you are not comfortable with, just disable the GPS. Read the privacy terms carefully, encrypt your communication, don't reply to spammers for any reason, and remember that you decide what information about yourself to reveal, when, why, and to whom. And the last slide is, this is an interesting website that I encourage all of you just to try. If you have been suspicious, if your email has been involved or compromised in any data breach, just access this website, haveibeenpwned.com. Enter your email address, and it will list all of the data breaches that have affected your data. And maybe it's very recommended just to try it. It's a very nice experience. And that's all for today. And thanks. And now we can move to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hussam. There are two questions from Izhar. First question: How can we protect our privacy, because most of the big companies breach data from different ways?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can we answer it one by one?
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Big data. It's a corporate word. We like it or not, it's a corporate word. However, what we can do just to make sure that our data is sharing in which platform and what type of data you have been sharing. For example, social media, Facebook, and specific. Facebook or social media, don't fill out your social media. Don't publish every your social action or of your stories or of your adventures. Don't share them there, and make sure that you are very cautious, because at the end you are the owner of your data to some extent. However, we totally understand that all of these big corporates are using our data. We have some sort of power, and unfortunately, the power is also not within our hands in other regards. However, sharing the data and choosing which platform and what type of data to be shared is in our control.
The second question is: Does Facebook and TikTok breaching data?
Definitely yes. Definitely yes, and also because one of the evidences that I can bring for Facebook in specific, they have introduced an oversight regulatory body just to make sure that the individual posts are secured and how they are managed throughout the platform. And we have seen many legal claims in Europe in specific, and also in US. They are concerned about how Facebook is using our data. And maybe one of the interesting documentary that I have mentioned, Social Dilemma. And if you have watched this movie, you can see that these big corporates are having some sort of power over our data. However, I do believe that the ultimate power is the individual itself, because if you don't share your data, they will not breach it. You decide what type of data to be shared. Just remember that.
Thank you, Mr. Hussam. Sorry, there are another question, but I will ask Noor to complete the feedback form and send her question, and we will direct the question to Hussam. We are running out of time. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Thank you, Hussam, for your
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you.